Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a very simple formula that explains why we stall in the gym. Why we stall in the gym. Now some people will say, well, I don't care about my progress in the gym, I only care about them gains. Well, if you're not blasting a bunch of drugs, your performance in the gym is what determines them gains. In other words, if you don't find a way to increase workload, you will stop making gains unless you up the dose. And if you're not on any dose, then you're going to have to start, because that's a simple reality. Without additional tension, without additional metabolic fatigue, without additional workload, muscles do not grow. Actually, they don't grow longer than about 3 weeks. So that's it. If you say, I don't care about progress in the gym anymore, you will stop growing 3 weeks from today. That's it. You're never going to gain another drop of muscle. Very simple. So yeah, it matters to the guys who are chasing aesthetics also, because your aesthetics are only going to improve if you bring up your least aesthetic balanced muscle groups or you lose body fat. So back to the point, why do we stall? And people can come up with all sorts of explanations, the law of accommodations, all of this, all of that. You know what? The law of accommodations is met the second you add anything to your training. If you add a single element that improves workload anywhere, you bypass that law. The law of accommodation says that if you do the exact same thing for 3 weeks straight, meaning literally the same reps, same set, same lift, same tempo, you stop growing. Why? Because you probably are still at the same effective volume. It's a very simple formula. We stop growing when we train below our minimum effective volume. I don't care whether it's systematic or whether it's a muscle group itself. When we train below our minimum effective volume. Well, the problem here is that we can't always control all the factors of how hard we train, because there's twofold on the other end. We have the fact that you might not be training hard enough, or you might not be using enough workload, you might not be using enough tension on the bar. There could be something on your training end, psychological, and that could be lifestyle factors, motivation, or even what coaches of top lifters decades ago called staleness. Meaning, in other words, a lifter gets so bored with what he's doing that he gets stale. And we've all been there. I mean, I've gone through my phase of that. I went through my whole phase for a lot of external reasons going on in my life that I didn't want to go into in detail online. Yeah, I wasn't training that hard. I wasn't training with enough exercise volume on anything other than maybe the deadlift. And everyone is now like, oh man, all you do is deadlift is your only lift. That's why I'm rebuilding everything else. I'm not going to have that. I'm going to have 4 or 5 lifts to where people go, okay, this guy's pretty strong. It's going to take me a little while. But understanding what's going on here is important. So there's the psychological component of you just might not be training enough. You might not be utilizing enough workload or enough intensity, which is tension on the bar, sets, reps, exercises, things like that, to reach your minimum effective volume. Your minimum effective volume is a threshold that you, at your point in development, and this will continue to raise. The longer you train, the bigger you get, the stronger you get, the higher the bar moves. And this is something that even noobs learn in their first year at any point in your lifting. When you reach a threshold to where you don't add anything, you stop growing. We all know this. We've all seen this. If you choose to go in and bench press 155 pounds for 3 sets of 10, you will eventually stop growing if that's all you do for your chest and triceps. If you don't add weight, you don't add exercises, you don't add reps, set something, you will stop growing. All right, we know this. So in other words, you've no longer at your minimum effective volume once you've adapted to that. So yeah, we always have to find ways to increase workload, to increase tonnage, tension, fatigue, things like that. It will continue to increase the amount that you have to utilize to continue to grow. Or to adapt, I should say, because there's more going on than just muscle growth there. There are adaptations that affect every element of performance, and they're often structural in nature. So the other thing to consider is that when something goes on to where your maximum recoverable volume is no longer higher than your minimum effective volume. In other words, when your minimum effective volume exceeds your ability to recover. This is where we run into a problem. This is where people oftentimes stall also. This is where training style, lifestyle, progression rates, everything else factors in. Now, on one end, it could be the fact that the exercise selection we are using or the reps and sets we are using beat us up so much. They beat us up so much that we can no longer adapt in a timely enough manner to train with the amount of frequency that we need, or they beat us up so much that the recovery time from these workouts starts to cut into our growth window. Meaning our minimum effective volume is up at a certain threshold, and the amount of training and the style of training that we're using to reach that number, because it can be reached through multiple different ways, starts to beat us up to the point to where we're taking 24, 48 hours. If it takes you 48 hours to recover at the muscular level, at the connective tissue level, particularly the muscular level, from a given workload, you're probably not going to grow from it. You're probably not going to grow because at this point, the volume that you have utilized has exceeded your maximum recoverable volume. And now you are not growing from those training sessions, no matter how grueling and hard they are at that point. Again, you only have a limited window of growth of up to about 48 hours. And if you're not recovered, at least it's certain elements of your body, at least the muscular level, not necessarily the connective tissue or the bone or any of that. But if you're not recovered from that in less than 48 hours, you're probably not going to grow. All right, that's it. You're not going to adapt to that workout. And that happens through training style. And that's something that we have to factor in. There are times, this is where sometimes we have to utilize smaller lifts at times. And I'm someone who's big on barbell movements. I'm big on axial loading movements. But at a certain threshold, you can only do so many deadlifts. At a certain threshold, you can only do so many standing presses before you can no longer recover from the workload that you're subjecting yourself to. And in which case, when what you can no longer recover from starts to exceed what you need to gain, you're in trouble. Now, people say, well, how's that possible? You should always be able to recover. Well, not always. This is where lifestyle comes in. This is why the more advanced you get, the more critical sleep, rest, nutrition, and stress management come in. This is one reason it's easier to gain muscle on a bulk than it is when you're losing body fat. You have more anabolic hormones. Very, very simply put, if you're eating an extra 1,000 calories of carbs versus, let's say you've been losing weight slowly, 1/2 pound a week, and you add 1,000 calories of carbohydrates into your diet, all of your anabolic hormones, all of your training fuel, everything is going to go up. You're going to recover much, much faster, right? You're going to recover much, much faster. I'm not saying people can't make gains without a surplus, because it's possible. But if you think they're comparable to when you're overeating, you really haven't been training very long. When you are overeating, gains come fast, but that's one factor. Okay, so nutrition. But if you're going to be on limited calories and you're not going to just be hammering down and bulking and gaining weight, any nutritional deficiency, something as simple as not getting enough carbohydrates, something as simple as not getting enough magnesium in your diet, right? Dietary deficiency will contribute to recovery. Lack of sleep. Let's say you switch over and you're only getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night for 2 weeks straight. That is going to severely inhibit your recovery. You're going to reach a threshold to where you're not going to recover from the workouts that are needed to make you grow. And so either you stop recovering or you bring the workload down. Well, if you bring the workload down and it falls below your minimum effective volume to stimulate adaptation, you're done. How about stress? Stress is a big one. If you reach a certain point in your life, and most of us listening here are not full-time professional athletes with no social life, stress happens. We have problems in relationships. We have problems in our jobs. We have external problems that we cannot always control. The stress of those things will absolutely affect your recovery. And that's one of many things. There's a lot of other factors: nutrition, sleep, stress, all sorts of things. How much active recovery are you doing? So at a certain threshold, it becomes critical to understand that the entirety of your lifestyle, the more advanced you get as a lifter, the entirety of your lifestyle will impact your training volume and your ability to recover from it. And if any of those factors brings your maximum recoverable volume down to a point to where it falls below your minimum effective volume and workload to stimulate new adaptations, then you will stop gaining. You will stop gaining until you remedy the situation. That's it. And that can be done with lifestyle. That can be done with changing your training protocols. It can be done by adding easier to recover from accessory work and maybe slightly reducing the volume on your bigger lifts. Right? There's a lot of factors at play here, but ultimately it's balancing those two factors are everything. That explains almost always, why we stall. At least real stalls, not perceived stalls, but legitimate stalls. So I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.